up, guys? Welcome to the show. Tyler's Talking RCA. Got my buddy Olin and Kody joining us again. He was in the previous drag racing one. Today, as promised in the other one, we're going to talk a little bit about setup. Nothing too deep into it. Mostly basic setup stuff. Shocks, diffs, ride heights, that kind of stuff. But before we get into that, I got a little bit of news. We got the upcoming races. We got March Madness Oval and On-Road this weekend. That's Saturday Oval, Sunday On-Road. ARMA sale still going on at the shop till the end of the month, so check that out. Some pretty good deals. We got plenty of cars in stock. And then I believe there's a deal coming out on the SCX 10.3 and the Deadbolt. So that's going to be just a flash sale towards the end of the week. But I think that's all I got for news today. So I'm going to pass it off to Kody. We're just going to talk general setup and class stuff.
So what's up, guys? You might recognize me from the last one, but if not, I'm Kody, RNS Racing, Team Monster Grip. We're going to bring you just a basic kind of rundown of your two types of cars you'll see in something like Bracket and 13.5, and then something like what you'll see in Outlaw. We're not going to get too sciencey on you. We'll do that at a later date. You know, we could maybe do an episode for like motor setups too and stuff like that.
It can get pretty deep into the Outlaw class.
Yeah, very.
I think what we're mostly trying to keep this one is like if you had, maybe built a truck that wasn't, initially a drag truck, and you're trying to set up the shocks and the diff and the tires and kind of break it down like that, and touching in on how to get the car to go a little straighter for you.
Yep. So basically, really the most important thing, whether you're going to run a beginner or slower class like 13.5 or Bracket or Outlaw, most important thing I tell everybody to start with is a good battery.
Sure.
Because...
Oh, I didn't grab the Trinity one.
So the Trinity 6400 we had on hand, I was going to grab one, but just those brick batteries, 2S, 4P, 5P, 6P, there's so many different batteries coming out now.
Yeah. We saw the Trinity one is really good.
That's what I run. That's the only battery I run until I find something that outperforms it, and I haven't yet. There's a lot of stuff that's right there. But that's a good battery, too, and they have them here pretty much all the time, whenever they can get them.
Yeah.
A bad battery is going to ruin the whole setup. Mm-hmm. You can buy all the right stuff, and if you pull that trigger and you're dropping voltage into the 5s or low 6 the whole run, not only is it going to be slow, it's going to be dangerous. It could melt your stuff. So battery is number one. Number two, after that, I'll use this drag slash as an example. Another important aspect of it is your suspension. These things come out of the box. I don't know if you can see the little blue spacers here in the shocks, or little urethane. Yeah, there you go. They come with shock spacers, so in the front that mostly helps with, when you hit the brakes, you don't want the car doing this. Helps you stay nice and stable. In the rear, these ones aren't limited because they run really firm from factory, but a lot of people will run a limiter in the rear so that when the car squats, it'll stop at a certain point and then start to kind of change your weight and throw a little bit more weight onto the butt of it.
I think they use front shocks in the rear of this. That's what they did on this car.
Yeah, they kind of look like a Rustler front shock.
Yeah, they use the front shock instead of a long one, so they're limited by the actual length of the body of the shock.
Right. So you want to run them kind of stiff in the rear. A lot of people will change out anywhere from 70 to 100 weight. I usually run like 80 in the rear, depending on your surface bite. If I've got really good traction and I don't really need to move the weight of the car as much, which will indeed lift up the front, I can promise you that, I'll run a little bit stiffer fluid, maybe a little bit taller spacer, so the car will squat and put a little bit more weight on the back. You definitely want to be running not a locked diff, but somewhere around 100,000 weight. Some people run million weight in the rear. Some people get away with lockers or running a solid rear end. I've never had luck with it. It's kind of a car-to-car type thing. Your car might like it, my car might hate it, and vice versa. But a good starting point is usually, anywhere in that 100, 200,000 weight diff oil, so that it'll pretty much be locked. But if it does need to search for traction a little bit on one side to stay straight, it can.
I believe the Traxxas comes with 500K from the factory.
Yeah, it's relatively heavy. I mean, you can tell. You can probably hear the gears, so it's pretty heavy. It takes a lot to spin something like that. But you will. So in the event that you do spin, obviously tires that are unbelted, like what comes with these drag slashes, are going to swell up on you. They're going to balloon.
Yep.
So another important aspect of it, if you're getting started, is a good belted tire. Try different compounds. Some people run air. Some people run several different foam structures to try and let the tire sit and put a little bit more contact patch on the ground. I have really good luck with both, foam and air. And you can use that in any class. So like if you have a set of voodoos or reactions that are on air that work on your Outlaw car, they'll probably work on your bracket car or your 13.5 car as well. Not to say that you have to run them, though. A lot of people have good luck with unbelted tires in 13.5 because they pick up a little mile per hour, letting it grow.
All right. Okay.
Because you won't be doing 70 at the end, so you're really not going to throw a DE Outlaw off of a tire, or off of a wheel, rather.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so you get a little bit of gearing, a little bit of mile per hour out of that tire growing 4 or 5 millimeter at the end of the track.
Good.
So that's really the most important beginner things I would say for getting started. Get the car to transfer weight and plant well by messing with your suspension. Hook up that traction, changing your diff, and good tires. Really, that's about it.
So
Things really start getting more complicated when you get into Outlaw. Yeah, these ones don't really have a lot of up travel.
I was gonna say how much front droop do you actually run in?
So I don't run 13.5. A lot of my teammates do on Monster Grip and RNS. But on average, usually you're going to want a good at least half an inch of up travel in the front suspension because it's going to weight transfer, and if you pick up and the car starts to do this...
Right. No control.
No control, yeah. And a lot of the time, if you're just getting started, by the time you notice that it's doing this, it's too late to let off, yeah, and then you end up in the wall messing up timing systems.
So would you
breaking stuff, all kinds of stuff like that?
Because I'm still not too deep on the drag racing, so I brought Kody in here for setup. So a question I get a lot is this one doesn't have the wheelie bar on the back, but I guess this car does.
Yeah. Extendable length.
If I have the car set up and I have the wheelie bar on the back, do I want it to hit the wheelie bar and still have the front wheels touching the ground?
Ideally. So
at that point it hits the bar, and then you can still steer.
Right. So
that's how I set up the front droop when I had the car.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good way to, I wouldn't say guarantee because it's always,
right.
Anything can happen, but the way I set my car up is I want the bar to touch as soon as I see that the front suspension is about 1/16 of an inch from fully unloading. So before the front tire comes off the ground, it'll hit that bar. The bar will kind of bend a little bit, push the car back down, but not violently to the point where it'll bump steer.
Right.
That's another important thing with setting up a lot of these cars is a lot of them will end up with bump steer, so when the suspension travels, the car will turn a little bit or toe in or toe out.
Yep.
So having a bar on there and getting your front droop set up and all of your links parallel with the arms, preferably parallel with each other.
You don't want bump steer? You want
no bump steer. Yeah, you want no bump steer at all because when it comes back down, the car will change geometry of the steering.
So you don't want... they don't do it. You don't want any shims or spacers on. You want these rods as straight as possible. That's how you get rid of the bump steer.
With a lot of them, you will have to run like a 1 or 2 millimeter shim out on the knuckle to get the arm to come up level.
Straight, yeah.
Ideally, you want it level at whatever your car is going to behave like during the run. So if they're, pointed at the ground a little bit, but your car will squat and kind of even out during the run, that's how you're going to want it.
Traxxas did a pretty decent job, actually.
They did, yeah. The front geometry on these is pretty good. Another thing that you definitely want to avoid if you're a beginner getting into Outlaw, moving on to those cars now, because that's about it to get into the basics of the slower class. Once you get all that stuff together, after that, it's about finding gearing, finding traction, cleaning and prepping your tires the same way every single time. That's once you find a good method. Consistency is everything. Just like if you're racing oval here or carpet or dirt or anything, you always want to do it the same way. Because when you're making changes and you're out on race day, if you're not doing everything the same way, a variable that you think you found could be because you did 2 coats of prep instead of 1.
Gotcha.
Or you didn't clean them as thoroughly as you did. So you see a change that you think is, I went up a tooth, I got faster. Or you just cleaned and prepped your tires better that time, so you go again and you slow down and can't figure it out. So consistency is just as important as a good battery, as good tires, as good suspension setup. Consistency is
it's key.
Yeah, if you can turn yourself into a robot and just do it the same way.
Tyler P. joke. Yeah. Consistency is key. And he's not here this week, but
There you go. In his honor. Consistency is key.
Yeah. One question for you. And people ask me all the time, how many runs should you get off of a tire? And I tell people, there's no set number because it varies. So,
So, I've had one set of reactions last all season.
Okay.
I've had one set of reactions last 2 races when I first started. Long burnouts are not only bad for everything in front of the tires, they're the worst for the tires.
Gotcha.
It's going to run unnecessary heat cycles through your tires that you really don't need. You're burning tread off for no reason at all, especially now that we're going to be properly running prep up here. You're going to see people running 1 or 2 set of tires all season.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So leading into that, what's your burnout game?
So
what do you do there? I see
it's
we
about
got John Forces, we got carpet users, we got the asphalt. What do you do?
So for me, this year is going to be a little bit different with dry tire. Even if we run tire heaters, you got to kind of keep that heat in the tires because you're not running anything to increase your traction. So this year, now that we're doing things differently, I'm going to apply the prep program that I used elsewhere here. And really, the mandatory burnout that you do is, just boop, boop, chirp it, make sure that they're sticky. You're not going to need to put a lot of heat in them because you're either using heaters. I use a heat gun now just because it's quicker, and I feel like it's just way easier to, spin a tire, hit it with a heat gun while I'm on the throttle a little bit, heat them up where I can feel it, and the heat will stay in there longer than a band will put it in there.
Gotcha.
Stays in there all the way to the line?
Yeah, pretty much.
That works.
If you're staging quickly and running through the rounds, really, the heat will stay in there for a good 3 minutes, I'd say.
You're heating right as your numbers... Well, let me back up.
Time
so you're heating right up as soon as you're about to hit the track.
Yeah.
To do your run.
Yeah. So basically, you'll come up, you'll go through your tech.
Yep.
After you go through tech, your car cannot leave the line.
Right.
You got to stay there. Because we checked your batteries, we checked your weight, we checked to make sure everything was legal.
Right.
After tech, people will put their heaters on. Normally, when you're coming through tech, you'll be like either the next race up or within, 2 or 3 races.
Okay.
That's why we do like an active tech as it's going, so we don't tech your car and then it sits there for a half hour while you wait for the rest of the round.
Gotcha.
So the heat will stay in there pretty good, but really, the burnout games that you're going to see this year are going to be just chirps, really, just to say I did a burnout. Because when you're running prep, if you put the prep on the tires and then go up there and do a big long burnout, your prep's gone.
Right.
Yep.
Burned it right off.
Yep. Another important thing about that is we're going to have boxes, or at least a line, burnout behind this line. That's it. We're going to hand out rules like we had talked about in the first episode. Any burnouts in front of that, you're all done.
Right.
That's it. That's just basic rules of conduct. And you really don't need a big burnout if you're running prep. If you're running a dry tire and you need that heat, or you're waiting for that bark, because I'm sure you guys have heard a lot of us will burn out until they chirp hard and grab. Yeah, so if you're looking for that and you need to do a long burnout, that's one thing, but I always at least set my transmitter to 50%.
Okay.
So then if you're doing a long burnout, the ESC isn't seeing a huge load.
Gotcha.
Because you're just going to burn stuff up. It's no good for you.
Gotcha.
And you're killing that peak battery voltage, too. Gotta be.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you go through tech, it's an 844 limit, just like all the other 2S classes. If you're doing a big 30-second burnout, now you're sitting at that tree waiting. Yeah, you're not going to have maximum voltage there anymore.
No.
Not to mention your system's already hot.
Right.
So that's a no-go.
All right, so...
And I've seen people, they do those big burnouts, and their ESC cuts out because they hit thermal.
Yep, because they're too hot.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so rolling with I kind of like the direction we're going. Oh, sorry, so you do your burnout, or your little whatever.
You burn out, yeah.
Okay,
for all intents and purposes.
All right, so keeping it on setup.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. One, finding the right gearing, considering everything else stays consistent. And 2, I see a lot of guys have problems with the car pulling one way or the other. So what do we do? I'll go with gearing first.
Gearing usually
the right gears, roughly. What do you?
On average, really, you're going to be in the 80s and under 20. In the 80s for your spur gear, and usually less than 20 on your pinion.
Though, right?
For a pro class car, yeah. For a 13.5 car, you're going to be looking a little bit smaller spur, bigger pinion, because you got a smaller motor that you got to try and get more out of.
All right, so
that's all test and tune. You got to get out there and just put the time in and try it.
Say they had this Traxxas truck and they're moving on from the bracket racing. The Valenian is out because this car comes fairly decently geared for just running it. Yeah. Honestly. So let's say, all right, I moved past the Valenian, but I'm gonna continue to use this chassis. I put a 3.5 in it and
DRK 160 or something. Yeah.
You know the good stuff, but I'm still running this car. You know what do we? You're gonna have to change the gearing at this point.
100%. Yeah.
What would you recommend?
I would start with like 87 spur. Start small on the pinion to where you're running out before the end of the track. Maybe like 87 16.
So you basically. It's kind of how we gear them for like the straightaways in here. It's the same. Yeah. Basically, you're gonna run the car. And you feel like it's still pulling past the 132 mark.
Right at 132, you don't want to get towards the end of the track and hear the car. Wah! You want it to keep pulling past that, but not to the point where
it's still winding out 200 feet.
Right, not to the point where your speed is picking up after the 80, 90, 100 foot mark.
So do you usually look at the mile per hour or the time when you're gearing?
I'm more worried about ET.
Always the time.
Yeah, I'm more worried about ET. There's a lot of guys out there running, 80, 88, 85, but you see that their ET, they're not running 1.5s or 1.6s. They're not running any faster than the guys that are doing the same pass at 73, 74, which is a common mile an hour here for most of us in the Eliminator class.
So you think it's, at that point, the car is just taking too long in the midsection to get to that speed?
66 foot time is pretty much the most important time for these cars. Just like if you're racing full scale, like a 1-to-1 ratio drag car, their 60 foot time is really important. If you're a dog in that first 60 feet, but you've got big mile an hour for the top end, you might be able to drive around me if I had a good 66 foot. But if I have a good 66 foot and I have a 75 mile an hour car and you've got a slow 60, it's just not going to happen, So the most important thing to test really when I tell people is do 66 foot hits. When you get to a point where you're like, ooh, that's a good 66 footer, take it to 132. If that 66 foot is the best one you've ran yet, chances are, if your gearing is on and you got good battery voltage and all the other plethora of variables are right, chances are if that 66 foot is a personal best, the 132 is going to be a new personal best as well. So if you can pick up time there in that first half, you're good. That's where you want to be the most concerned, really. Once you figure out the 66 foot, you'll be moving pretty good.
All right.
A lot of the testing that I do, even here, I'm sure you guys have been out there and seen us, I usually lift half track until I go back in the data logs and I see, okay, my voltage is high 7s, my temps are low, the car sounded good, it hooked good, let's pull 132 feet. And it's usually quicker every time. If I see a quicker 66 foot, that 132 is better every time.
That makes sense.
That's cool. All right, so gearing's good. My car hooks to the left all the time, hooks to the right all the time. I get that a lot. They're just, claiming it off the line or whatever, and the thing just does one of these things.
Most common thing that causes that is, even in a car that you buy ready to run, they could have screwed the eyelet onto the bottom of the right side shock 1 millimeter further in or out, so that when the car unloads like this, I doubt this car will do it. These Traxxas are built pretty. Actually, it will. You can see it. This tire comes off the ground
just a hair more than the
before other. That one does. Like that one will spin. This one's still touching the ground.
So we're talking front suspension setup.
Or rear, really, because it'll change the overall distance of your shock, how the car sits like this as well.
Yeah.
So a good thing to do right away if you're having issues with that is pop the shocks off the car, put them on a table, and measure eyelet to eyelet with the calipers, and make sure the rears are the same, the fronts are the same.
So you're saying it's usually your shock length or
shock length,
something binding up.
Weight bias, right. Spinning, and then this side spun more, and then caught, and it threw you that way. There can be a lot of stuff that does it, but most importantly is you don't want to set your car up so that this side is heavier than this side by a lot, because obviously a car that's like this is going to want to go that way down the track.
Right.
So your weight bias is really important, but first, before you start worrying about stuff like that, check all your links, make sure all your links are the same, make sure your shocks,
everything's
symmetrical. You want everything. I have a caliper that goes down to the second digit, and I have ADHD, so they all match. Like if one is, let's say, 25.86, the other one's 25.86, just so that I know when the car misbehaves and lifts up, if the tires are going to come off the ground, I don't have one tire on the ground still causing drag on that side to pull me one way or the other. So if you can keep all that stuff identical, that's going to help you narrow down. Say, okay, it's not that. It's still pulling left. Let me put some weight here, see if I can change what's going on there.
Do you ever adjust the spring tension individually?
Yes and no. So when you move on from these stock shocks, obviously you're going to have threaded collars.
Right.
So you can kind of change your preload on one side or the other. Some cars, you put them on scales and you're like, okay, my weight is perfect and it's still doing this. Might want more preload on one side or the other. You might have a tire that you didn't glue quite as straight as the other side, and it throws it off a little bit, and that tire that misbehaves wants to wander down the track.
Gotcha.
So there's a million things that can cause it, but most importantly, the first thing to do to weed that out is make sure all your stuff is the same length. Because if you've got a rear shock that's 2 millimeters longer, it's going to be, in theory, it's going to be doing 2 millimeters more downforce on that side than the other side, so it's going to cause problems.
That makes a difference.
Right. Yeah, and the car is going to sit like this. So that's going to change everything. Which if the car's like this, then the body's like that.
So we got the gears.
So, yep.
We got the suspension. And then you just mentioned gluing tires. Do you glue tires or do you run beadlocks? Because I get asked that a lot too.
Specifically this year, I'm gluing only. Last year I ran Voodoos and Reactions on split 6 beadlocks.
Particular reason?
Just because the tires I'm running now don't work on beadlocks. The Cyril 3DFX, shout out Josh, are a equal sidewall on either side. Okay. So he has his own wheels. I think it's a 2.6 something sidewall, and they're glue on. They're not beadlock. No.
Would you generally recommend to somebody to use a beadlock over gluing?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. 100%.
That's what I usually do.
I glue a lot, and I'm awful at it still.
Gotcha.
It's not an easy task. If you're a beginner,
beadlock it.
Don't bother. Yeah, just buy split 6s. I mean, you pop them apart, you put one piece inside, and the other one clamps it together. Do it like a drum head, so, tighten here, and then you go your corners and everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And you're much better off like that, yeah.
A little more consistent.
Yeah, it's much easier. Like with the tires that I'm gluing now, they go on a balancer and everything. I spin them before I even glue them, make sure they're mounted straight. It's a process to get tires perfectly balanced and straight and glued. Okay. It's not easy.
So we got that covered.
Yeah.
Let's see, we talked about the diff, a little bit about tires, suspension. Gearing we talked about. Mm-hmm. And I kind of briefly touched about, I want to just go into the electronics a little bit because I get asked this too. So you buy a truck like this, it comes with, Valenian setup or your Spectrum setup for your low C or DR10s, and it's got something in it.
Whatever.
All right.
I think it's like a Reedy system in the DR10.
They asked me, I want to take this car and I want to bring it into this class.
Right. So let's do that then.
So what I usually tell them is they got to upgrade
either way.
Yeah. Your motor and speed control, and I usually tell them to get a different body.
100%. Yeah. So a body like that truck, if you want to step into Outlaw, and I can't stress this enough, if you're just getting started, it might be a harsh truth, but this isn't the class for beginners. Outlaw is a highly dedicated, we're freaks of nature with these things. We're out anytime we have time. We're out making test hits. Yes. I'll put my kids to bed and go up to the grocery store at 2 a.m. and be out there until I go to work the next day. Yeah, and it's getting to the point where Outlaw is so serious that if you're not willing to basically do this and run Outlaw class only, there's a chance you might not be competitive. It's just like the guys that run hardcore carpet mod classes and they're here testing whenever they possibly can. It's hard to catch that guy.
Yeah, never recommend somebody getting it. That's why we have a stock racing class for a reason, because
bracket 13.5 gasser stuff like
fast.
That. Yeah,
it's fast. And you got to know how to set up. But anyway. So you had the Slash car. You kind of want to take it a little bit. We're not going to go too into the woods here, but take it to the next level a little bit.
So this is very similar to the car that I ran last season. This is an Exotech Vader chassis conversion for a TLR car, 22.5.0 it looks like, laid down tranny.
Yep.
This is like your basic, I don't want to say entry level because it is a carbon chassis car, but this is your
entry level
common
pro class.
Yeah, this is your common setup for an Outlaw car.
This was just this one's a couple years old, so this was kind of what was hot at the time.
Right, literally hot. So I'll explain why. So we got the RS Pro. There's no heat sink on these Tekin ESCs, no fan, nothing like that. So this is a brave setup, I guess you could say, for Outlaw. It'll work, but it's a one and done type thing. So when you step into Outlaw, you're gonna want to start around the 4.5 turn motor range with one of your common 10 scale pro level ESCs like a XR10 Pro, the DRK, shout out Macklin or McLean, that's what I run.
Yeah.
Your RX8s, your R1, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anything with
high-end 10 scale / 8 scale speed control.
A lot of 8 scale stuff is being used too. A lot of people are going really fast with like a Castle Mamba 6S ESC or 8S ESC. But most commonly you'll see these pro level 10 scale ESCs. So with something, when you step into Outlaw, you're going to want one of them, something that's capable of boost, turbo. The Macklin makes it real easy for beginners to step in because now it's 7 stages. It used to be 5, but it's got 7 stages where I can set stage 1 is 30% throttle for X amount of time. Stage 2 is X amount of throttle for X amount of time. You tell it when turbo comes in, how much, how fast. You're going to want all that stuff.
And that's the big difference between a speed control like that and a ready-to-run speed control.
Correct.
Yeah, you don't have any of that adjustability there. You might have like a beginner mode. I think those VLXs, they have like a training mode, I think,
just straight up cut it to half speed.
Yeah.
But nowhere near that boost in the timing is what brings these things to the next level. It makes the world of difference.
Yeah. So if you're running something like Gasser, those are the Titan 12-turn Traxxas motors, sealed can, no timing adjustments, anything like that. But when you step into Outlaw, you get into these mod motors where you've got your can timing, if you want to zoom in. You've got can timing, which is on the end of the motor, which kind of adjusts, your RPM, basically. We could say the higher your timing, the more the motor's going to want to turn. The more power you're going to generate, but also the more heat you're going to generate. So you're going to want to start with like a 4.5 turn motor and maybe an XR10 or a DRK 160. And, this kind of looks like the gearing I was talking about. That looks like an Associated 87 with a 16-tooth pinion. Super common place to start. Carbon chassis car. I wouldn't run that battery, but it's a decent enough battery to get you started. Most of the time, like I said, you're going to want to run a big brick pack battery.
This one was...
Right, yeah. This is like your base. You can get out there and do it. I've won with cars set up like this with,
the beginning of
with
last
lower
year
end batteries.
Yeah. This is when we were just starting to get into it. So in this last year or year and a half, a lot has changed.
Night and day.
Everything's changed. All the technology has changed now.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
Even that DRK now moving to 7 stages. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Yep. So there's 7 stages and 70 degrees of timing instead of 60 now. So there's.
Do you have to buy a new one, or is it you can update?
The older DRKs will upgrade to the new software. I've seen some people having issues. They have to just reflash once or twice to the new one, back to the old one, back to the new one. But the old ones do it. They have the Tim Smith Racing Edition, the TSR DRK 160 comes with that new 7 stage. It comes with upgraded parts on the inside to handle more load to the fan because the stock or OG DRKs, when you got on the throttle, the fan was shutting off.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they upgraded that in there,
That's
and
good.
they come with 10 gauge wire.
Nice.
Okay.
To the plug and to the motor.
Gotcha.
So the newer DRK, the TSR, is basically the old one on steroids with the 7 stage ready to go. That's what I run in my car.
Not to get too deep into it, I was just...
Right, yeah. So an ESC like that is so required for a class like this. You're not going to be able to run like a Hobby Wing. What is it, the 10BL 120, that $55 ESC that's got timing in it? It's just not up to it. It's so much amperage.
If you want to move and make that electronic upgrade, you're talking a $350 upgrade between the motor and speed control.
Easily. Yep.
Most of these speed controls are $250, and you're spending at least $100 on a motor.
And that's just a off-the-shelf Trinity RevTech.
Nothing special.
Yeah. Then you get into changing rotors, which we won't get into that today, but...
And some people say different radios are better. So
100%.
Controller would be the next thing.
100%. So something like this, with that Traxxas, the TQI that comes with it, more than enough for running a class like that. But when you step up into this, you're going to start seeing a lot of guys running M17, 7PXR, stuff that's
programmable.
It's like you're hardwired to the car at that point. It's like you become one with the car. They're so much more higher end. Gotcha. I'm using a low-end, high-end radio, the FlySky Noble NB4. I've got that thing really figured out for drag racing. There's a new software that came out. I'm actually talking with one of their reps about having a software made specifically for drag racing because there's some brownout features that kind of happen in that remote. I posted a video about that on the Connecticut RC page, on the RNS page. So if you guys are curious about that, send me a message. I can send you a link. That's a good entry-level remote, but it's still $300. You get into the 7PXs and the M17s, and you're talking $800 just for a remote. Right. When you could set up a whole car for Gasser for half of that. Right. So when I say that Outlaw is not a beginner class, it's not. It's not a beginner class.
If you're going all out and doing it, you're spending $2,500 easy.
Yeah,
easy.
Yeah. And most of us are running more than one car.
Right.
Just to give you a basic idea of what to expect. But moving into something like this, a lot of the similar things as the other classes, consistency, suspension setup, gearing, doing everything the same way. But when you step into Outlaw, you really have to write it on paper. Clean my tires with this, apply the prep, wait 5 minutes with the heaters, take the heaters off. If I'm at the line for more than 3 minutes, put the heaters back on.
Gotcha.
So it's a labor of love to run a class like this. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. But all the basics still apply though.
Yeah, it's the same really. That's why we point people in the direction of starting in a class like that, because you can take that routine to this, and there's half of your battle right there. If you already know how to run a consistent, reliable, effective race program in a slower class, you'll be a lot better off when you jump over to Outlaw. Right. But if you go, hey, this drag racing stuff's cool, I want to get started, I'm going to build an Outlaw car, I'm going to build, I have a bullet, so let's say I'm going to build an associated bullet out of a B6.2, I'm going to put a DRK on it, and a 3-turn. I can't tell people enough not to do that right off the bat. There's combinations, I'll touch on that quick, that work, and there's stuff that doesn't. You don't want to go buying a DRK and then just strap a 3-turn to it, because if you don't know how to tune safely and what to watch for, you might get one run out of that thing before it is literally on fire at the other end of the track. We just had a fire recently, so it's a very real thing that can happen. These things...
Mistakes happen fast when it's a 2-second race.
Right. I mean, we're talking on average a 2.2 second run. Mm-hmm. I mean, you might blink once during the run, and if you do, you missed half of it. Yeah. So it's very serious. When you step up to Outlaw, it's something you really want to consider is, do I have the time to get this serious, and do I have the dedication? Because it's a big program to run.
And going back to burnouts, a lot of those companies, the upper ESC motors, they give you a recommendation for burnouts, not to do the full. Oh yeah. They say do a quick.
They don't want you to burn them up.
Yeah. DRK will look at your data logs, and if you're doing John Force burnouts and you send them an ESC to warranty, not ESC, right. And they're not doing it. Right. At that point, they're all done. There's definitely a small window of operation when you move into this class. Right. And one mistake on either side of the spectrum, too much gearing, not enough gearing, can be explosive.
Not
literally.
For the faint of heart.
No.
Yeah, class is...
You're going to burn things up. Things are going to break.
Oh, it's not an if.
They're going to be expensive.
Right.
I mean, we're talking one-off chassis smashing into concrete blocks at 70 miles an hour.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, and you do that with your Traxxas, $30-$40 later, you can have it back out on the track. You do that with one of these, you're talking hundreds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and on top of that, you guys have multiple motors and ESCs.
Oh, they've been doing it for years. They've collected a whole
plethora.
If I get down to, so right now, I'm a little low on motorage just because I couldn't decide on what I want, because we can't get motive motors right now. I won't say much more on that, but I usually have about 3 or 4 ESCs on hand, a couple motors, about 3 or 4 rotors to try out.
Pause for 2 seconds. But that's not in your other cars.
That's just ready. That's ready for this car.
That's what I'm saying. That's on standby.
Yeah. That's just spares for one car. Right. Yeah. So if you're running 2 cars, you probably got spares for both.
Right.
So it gets deep.
It's really the difference between you're taking your hopped up Mustang to the racetrack as your Traxxas to full on NHRA. You're showing up with a semi truck.
Yeah.
Multiple motors.
Right.
That's the difference.
This is the nitro drag car class.
This is full boat.
Yeah.
But so, not to get too much deeper into setup because I think we covered pretty much everything. Mostly, I don't know. What do you got? Something?
Chargers.
That's another huge thing that I'll go over too.
Yeah,
because I did talk about I did talk about the importance of a good battery.
And do you discharge?
Yes, I will give you a little rundown of that. Okay. So
battery setup.
To cut you off.
Battery setup. Another. This is something that beginners really shouldn't do, but a warm battery is an effective battery. I'm sure you guys know that. Right around 100 degrees is money, right about there. That's not to say wrap your tire heaters around your battery while you're charging and discharging, because I might not be standing there with my fire extinguisher at the time. But we charge at some big amperage for these batteries. We've popped a couple trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. Usually we'll charge anywhere between 8 to 12 amps, depending on how high you really want to go, and then discharge right about the same, 10 to 12 amps. And we cycle them to get the IR down, to get the temperature up in between rounds, stuff like that too.
So when you're doing the charging and discharging, do you have the battery warmers? So you don't want to use a...
We do.
Okay.
So the way I'm going to do it...
Somebody asked me about that, so I'm just...
Yeah, there's a couple of companies. I think the guys that are making hot bands, which is a popular tire heater, I think they're going to start to make... I can't say the name of it, but they might start making a battery heater.
Okay.
So watch out for that. It's going to be specifically...
And can you explain
for a brick pattern.
Can you explain what a battery heater is?
So it's going to be basically a fire-safe Kevlar bag with a spot for the wires to come out of. While you're charging, discharging, you can put it in there and leave the warming aspect of it unplugged. Or if you're really trying to squeeze all the power out of these batteries, you can set it to a temperature. A lot of people use heated lunch boxes right now. Sometimes I'll pop the hood of my car and just kind of leave it on there and kind of go, well, that's kind of hot. Yeah, flip it over like a hot steak.
Midsummer, you just leave it in the middle of the ground.
Put it on the roof of my black car. Plenty warm. But you're going to see a couple companies coming up soon with battery heaters too.
Oh, yeah.
I can't say enough about how important a good battery is, man. If you've got a good charger that'll check IR, and you've got IR that's in the 1.5, 1.8, that battery is not going to get you anywhere.
Gotcha.
Not to say that battery can't go through 3 or 4 hard cycles and drop the IR to sub 1. Because we've seen that happen as well. One of my teammates, Bill, had a couple batteries that we were like, it's kind of questionable. Cycle them a couple times, and you can knock some serious points off that resistance. Also, heating the battery, it's going to give that up even easier.
Right.
So let's say, like one of those Trinity 6400s at room temp, 72 degrees, or let's say summertime, 85 degrees, the battery's in the car. That 200C battery's not going to give it up as good as the same exact battery that's warmer, because electricity generates heat. If that heat's already there, it doesn't have to generate it. So it's going to flow much easier.
Gotcha.
Just like a river that's hitting a bridge with a tiny little hole. If you can make that hole bigger, you can move more water through it. Same amount of water in the lake, it's just easier to get about. So
makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with batteries to get a lot more performance out of them. And heating and cycling and having a good charger, it's mandatory.
Just even the stuff you're talking about with batteries is just...
I could do a whole episode on batteries.
That's just driving home the point of this class versus that class.
Right.
Because you don't need to do all that stuff if you're running your slash.
You really don't. No. If you're in bracket, gasser, stuff like that, it might give you the competitive edge, but you're running such similar equipment that you're not gonna shave off 2/10 doing it in a slower class. I mean, it's possible, don't get me wrong, someone might prove me wrong now that I said that, but this stuff really applies to more like your outlaw class. When we're putting a car together and we go, okay, this car's doing a 2.0 or a 215 at 74. I know I've got more of it here. What can I do? That's when you start playing with bigger batteries, warming up the battery, changing your prep program, stuff like that. So I'll spend 8 hours to anywhere from like 8 to 12 hours on one setup before I say this setup doesn't work. Another big mistake people will make in any class, outlaw, gasser, 13.5, bracket, front wheel drive, like the Dirty Den guys, shout out to them. Another big mistake they'll make is that they will set a car up, do 2 hits, say one hit on 1887, one hit on 1987 gearing, and they go, this setup's not going to work, and they change it. Well, that setup, if you put 2 hours into it, might have given you the results that you wanted. So when you move to a class like this, you have to be willing to put the time into it, because I can spend $3,000 and go out and buy an Apollo and run all the best stuff and have backups and run heated, prepped red Voodoos and still not get out of the 230 range, 220 range, because you can buy potential, but you can't buy that ET. You got to go out there and find it.
Right.
Regardless if someone says, hey, I run a Bullet with a DRK ESC, an R13 turn with this rotor, these tires.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're going to put all that stuff in your car and go do exactly what they did. You have to go out there and make hits.
When you're running the peak of performance of anything, money is not really going to get you anywhere because these guys have already put in the money. They've got the cars. Even if you bought Cody's car tomorrow fully set up and slapped it on the track, you still have to know that battery game, the prep game, the the track conditions, tweaking this, tweaking that. It's just...
Yeah. It's professional racing.
A big learning curve.
Yeah, it's a professional level race. Not to mention, when you're racing in an outlaw class like this, there's races this year that I know I will be attending. I'll be going to King of Streets, a couple other large-scale races around the country. You're racing for $20,000.
Big time.
Literally $20,000. I mean, we've ran for less money in the big car world.
If you don't know how to set up your car and you're racing for $20,000, these guys are not going to help you beat them. You come out with your slash, and you're like, Kody, my slash keeps pulling to the left. You'll be like, no problem, dog. I'll help you with that. If you got the Pro Mod class, they're racing for $2,000. Kody, my car's pulling to the left. Good, your car's pulling to the left because I'm going to beat you. Good. They're not gonna help you. It's like two national drag teams. Like, oh, I'm going to go help the Chevy guy. The Ford guy needs help.
Yeah. We're always happy to help.
To a point.
But there's an extent.
It's competitive. I mean, you can't expect them to drive the car for you, dude.
Right, yeah. We're happy to help. I mean, there's even points where I'm happy to say, hey, I'll plug your car and throw a tune-up in it, see what it does.
Sure. Once you know that car's going straight, like, here you go. You got to learn how to use it.
Right. Exactly. That's the thing, is I can't help you be consistent.
Right.
I can help you get the car set up and go, this should do this now. But you still have to make it do that. You got to go find those times. You have to find what prep game's going to work for you. So we're always happy to help. Anyone with this shirt on or an RNS Racing shirt or a Dirty Den shirt, if you need help, we will give you some help. We'll help you out with the basics.
There's a big difference between giving somebody help and just doing the hobby for them.
Exactly. Yep. And that's, I don't want to say an issue, but it's something that you see a lot.
It's an issue.
It's people
that
all the time. They'll come over to your table and go, can you make this go fast?
Sure. Can you?
Sure, yeah, right? Sure. Maybe I can, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be able to hand that car back to you.
You still need to know how to use your toy.
Right. Especially, and we stress that really mostly for Outlaw.
Yeah.
Because something like that is not as in-depth. We expect you to need that help. Right. Yeah. If you're in the gasser class or 13.5, or if you're buying a slash and running it in bracket, because you can run just about anything that'll do quicker than a 5-second 132-foot in bracket, I'm more than happy to help you with that because you don't know. That's the entry class. That's the easy class for you to learn this stuff in.
Right.
That's why we can't stress enough that jumping into Outlaw, a lot of people will get discouraged because there's not going to be as many people that are going to plug your car in and take your radio and put a good tune-up in it and stand side by side with you all day when they're trying to run their program in this class. It's just not as likely. So if you're starting out, this just is not the class for you. Unless you race competitively in other classes already and you really know how to set up a car and how to make changes and watch for the changes working and not working, don't start an Outlaw because you're going to spend a lot of money. You're going to go to one race, be out in the first round.
Get discouraged.
And it's super discouraging.
It has to be
We're
fun.
Experienced guys, and we'll go out and be out in the first round, and it's friggin' discouraging. It's tough.
Right.
When you spend the hour and a half driving there, the weeks getting the car ready, and then you get there, and it spins because your tires weren't hot or you didn't clean them consistently during testing, and then you're out first round. It happens to guys that win. It happens to new people. So...
But you gotta
gotta stay dedicated and consistent.
You gotta have that, dedication. You have to have that fun and that desire to be into it. Because if you don't, like you said, you can give somebody a car. If their heart's not in it, it's not.
You can't do it. Yeah, exactly.
If you just want to come down and use a strip and bang around your buddies, just buy a few slashes, throw some 3-cells in them, and just have some fun.
That's the best thing to do right there. Is any of the ready runs, DR10, low C slash,
play with your tires. Put some good tires on them. And
right.
Just have fun with it. And for a little perspective. I played around with this class too in last year, and it was hard for me. And I know a lot about a lot of this stuff. And these guys are just smoking me on the track too. And I was like,
I'm still learning too. I mean,
crazy.
Last year was my first year doing NPRC, no prep drag racing. Before that, as you know, I was doing speed runs. I had one of the fastest infractions in the world. I got into this, and it
what?
big claim, right? The video's on YouTube.
No,
check it.
But I came over to drag racing from that, and I still was like I had so much to learn. I thought I knew how to go fast, but trying to go fast in 132 feet,
it's a lot harder.
Whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Anybody can go fast with a quarter mile, 130 mile an hour and 1,500 feet.
Right.
It's not that impressive to me anymore.
Yeah, they've made that fairly easy. At this point.
Yeah, it is. It's really easy, especially stuff with like the perfect pass now.
Like 6-ish, 7 years ago, me and Olin were killing ourselves trying to do 100 miles an hour out here.
And
the XO1 comes out, now it just does 100.
Yeah, we're just running them out here with buggies and stuff, and then the infractions came out and the big motors and
that was it.
That was it.
It's too easy now. We don't even mess with it now.
Throw a TP motor in there and big battery and do 140, no problem.
Yeah, because they made it. I don't want to say it made it easy, but
it definitely made it more accessible for your commoner.
Yes,
yeah, that's what it
just about anybody with $2,000 in their pocket can do 120.
You don't have to think about it as much.
No.
Yeah.
But not to get too into
it. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we just about covered everything. I guess to just wrap everything up.
One quick question. Not to cut you off. Wheelie bars, 2 wheels or 1?
Either one.
Okay.
So we run a 15-inch max from, this has been controversial, from here to here, the back of the wheelie bar, 15 inches no longer. So in the 13.5 class, there was a no bar rule. They are allowing a wheelie bar for kids under 14, I believe, 14 and under, until your first win. Then the wheelie bar's got to go.
Gotcha.
Because it's an aid at that point. It's helping you learn how to keep the car down until it doesn't touch that bar. And by then, you're probably going to take home your first win.
Right.
So after that, no bar. But 1 wheel, 2 wheel, either one. That's fine.
Performance
we have... some people will say that a 2-wheel wheelie bar will be a little bit more stable. I run a 2-wheeled wheelie bar. I run a shocked wheelie bar. Actually, these are solid. That's why they've got that link there. But I run a dual wheel wheelie bar that's pivot on the back with 2 shocks.
Okay.
I kind of like 2-wheel.
It's a preference thing.
Yeah.
Something
really,
you just gotta try.
You can make it work either way. I mean, there's guys that run no wheels. There's wheelie bars coming out now that just have a plastic pad. Yeah. And they work. They work great.
Is that legal?
Yeah.
With the skid?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. As long as you're not over, because people will pull the wheel off and then put a big plastic skid on there that's like 2 inches long.
Right.
And then they're over.
Right.
So as long as you're within that wheelie bar rule,
okay.
I don't care if there's 1 wheel, 2 wheels, a plate, nothing.
Right.
Sparks from old Heelys back in the day, whatever you want to do.
Right, okay.
But there is a diameter of that wheel rule. I don't know it off the top of my head. I want to say it's 1 inch or 1.25 inches. But the wheel you can't have a big roller.
Big ass wheel, right.
Gotcha.
We have those posted on, I believe, your page, on the RNS racing page, and on the Connecticut drag racing page. So all of the rules
I got
in full depth are posted. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yep.
I didn't even think about wheelie bars. Should be cool.
Yeah.
All right, so what I was going to say before, just to wrap it up. No, you're good. That was a good question.
Oh, April 10th, first event up here at RCMadness as well.
Yeah, we got them all posted on the Facebook page. So just wrap it up. Set up, make sure everything's symmetrical. Heavyweight shock oil, a little bit of droop in the front. Tire prep game good. Make sure you have a solid battery, depending on the class.
Or 2, really. Ideally, you have a couple of them.
A couple batteries. And then, recommend starting out with some kind of ready-to-run model or something relatively close and just getting consistent with a slower car.
Yeah.
And then maybe making little modifications here and there, working your way into this pro class because it gets pretty insane and serious.
Yeah, I would say go from bracket racing, where you can just buy anything, realistically. No nitro either, obviously, because it throws fuel all over the track. But
no nitro.
Go from bracket racing into 13.5 Blinky, because then you have a 13.5 motor, no timing allowed other than on the can. Get good at that, stepping down a lot. Ideally, that's what I'd like to see new people do, is start in bracket class, go, okay, I like this. Because a lot of people will watch it, set one up, do it, and say, I don't have the attention span or the time.
Honestly, I think that's what I'm going to do. Because I tried this class with this car last year, and I got to go pretty good a few times, but I was not consistent with it.
I would argue that it's more fun.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Slash and just try that.
It's more about the camaraderie and actually
just
having fun in those classes. Yeah, like it's a nice break.
I know I'm not gonna put in the time to beat you guys.
And you can do both. You can do this
100%. Yeah.
And bracket.
You can race bracket 13.5 and outlaw if you want.
There's
That's
no
fine.
limit on what you can. If you want to put, because regardless, you're still putting the time in whether it's bracket, 13.5 or outlaw.
Right. There's just more time to put in as you step up that ladder.
Right.
But really, whatever car you start with in bracket, even if it's a LCG Slash that still has the trophy truck body on and you run it in the bracket class, a couple $100 will turn that car into a really capable 13.5 car. So as you step up, you can run different classes. Maybe have your bracket car turn into this and pick up a drag Slash that you still run in bracket so that as you get used to this, and you come up on Saturdays, because on Saturdays we're going to probably be running $5 races at night. Another little announcement that I kind of want to half announce is the National Points Series, NPRC Points Series. I'm going to be organizing a National Points Series for Connecticut, and we will be running that the Saturday before our Sunday races. It's the only way we can really
squeeze it in.
Dedicate to making it happen, and we had a lot of questions about.
We usually do the race on Saturday anyway. So
we're up here we're up here every weekend anyways.
We're here pretty much any day that the sun's out.
If there's a Y on the end of the day of the week, I'm not at work, or changing diapers,
you're here.
I'm doing this, So to really dedicate myself, because we've got 7 events already. And this adds another 6 for this National Point Series. The only way I can dedicate to doing that for you guys is if I do it on the Saturday before our big 7 races. We're not going to do it April 9th because April 10th obviously is our season opener event up here. And I just don't have the time in me to get everything set up for April 9th. So at our May race, the Saturday before that cash day that we have posted, will be our first NPRC National Point Series. So just a quick little announcement. I'll probably do a live video to go over that tomorrow night, either on the RNS page or the Connecticut page, and I'll give you the basics, rules, and stuff like that. So,
good, man.
Other than that, that's the basics. That's the entry level info you need for drag racing. Kind of know what to expect.
Gotta walk before you can run.
Yep. You can try to run first if you want. Some kids they skip walking and go right to running. So
run right into the fence.
But they can't stop.
Yeah. That's another issue that we have. Some people worried about for this season, for this class specifically, is now that we're running prep and you're going to be getting close to 80, seeing a lot of sub 2 passes. Stopping's not going to be the easiest.
Bands to catch them like jets.
Put a 132-foot chain on the back of each one of them, so the second you get there, hard jerk stop. We'll figure it out. Yeah, we did a good job last year keeping the track clean. This year I'm going to do a OCD level job of keeping the track clean between rounds, between classes. So stopping really probably
won't be. We didn't schedule any outdoor dirt events during these events either, so I was pretty trying to do my best to really make sure that didn't happen. So.
Yeah, and that was the only issue with the track, really.
Try to cut down on the dust and everything.
But we're going to get out there this weekend, too, and clean the track up, take some measurements for the timing system and stuff, too. So
beautiful.
Okay.
Get that track ready for April.
All right. Well, I think this is a show, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully we helped you out with the track setup.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Make sure to come down and do some drag racing with us. Even if you're coming out to hang out and practice, it's still a good time. We'll all be floating around. Hit us up.
Absolutely.
Check out the RNS Facebook page, our Facebook page, dates, times,
rules, tips, videos, everything.
Updates throughout the season. And of course, remember to like, subscribe, and share. More cool drag racing videos to come and RC videos. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
See you.
Peace.